I cannot. Hello, anyone?
Hello.
Hi, Altair.
Hello.
Hi, Satkirtan Karur, Satnam. Hi, Johanna, Randall. Hey, Alan from the US, from Cyprus.
Hi.
From Harvard, close to Harvard. Miguel Cañas from Barcelona.
Hello, Esther.
Hi,
How are you
hola,
doing?
buen día. Buenas
Hola,
tardes.
buenas tardes.
¿Cómo va?
Buenas tardes, parle catalán.
Ah,
Hi there, welcome everybody to our event from Conscious Enterprises Network. My name is Esther Robles, and I'm one of the co-founders of CHEN, as we call it in a more like fastest way, which is kind of like has this kind of symbolism of a chain, of we're all part of the chain. And today we are very happy and honored to have one of our close friends into our network called Mark Anielski. As you know, you have already read in the biography a bit about him. We're going to go a little bit through his life in kind of maybe a different way. He's usually the one who is presenting. So he's going to take now the seat of just tell us a little bit more about him. So we're going to start just now talking about the economy of well-being. He's been working for so long in his life, and how we can build this civilization of love he's talking about. How can we build that with an economy that perhaps is not really so much taking as resources and is more about sharing and collaborating and supporting each other. And the end, we will ask you to just look for entering a few words in a little questionnaire we're going to ask you with Menti Mice. So we're going to start. Okay, so I'm going to just do a very short presentation about Mark. And I'm going to present some of his books that he has written. He wrote the first book he wrote it in 2006, called The Economics of Happiness. And he's been published in different languages. He's been a book to really bring that common sense for building genuine wealth and happiness, also in his second book. So Mark Anielski has been described as an economist with a twist perhaps, because he believes that happiness can be created when we are using and building abundant economies around our planet. He wrote his first book in 2006. As I've said, back then, not many people were speaking about the meaning of happiness in our societies, in the broad aspect of work on society. And it seems to have been a lost concept in our society that has been struggling in the last hundreds or even thousands of years to create a civilization that is creating equality and a fair society. So we are right now looking for solutions in our planet that is seeking for finding some more changes to our current systems that are making us really feel unhappy and incomplete. So coming from this book, it shows the second book shows also different methods in how the current system could be improved and become more cooperative with its stakeholders, where money should be staying more in the community and not in the pockets of a few and in tax havens. So some of these models in the book, for example, talk about companies that are building societies that aim to raise social well-being by providing fair and equitable compensation for employees, company investment in renewable and sustainable practices, local procurement of goods and services, and environmental practices, which are restorative of land, air, and water, while also benefiting a little bit investors. So his second book, as I've said, published a few years ago, talks further how to use this common sense tools like a compass to design our lives, businesses, and world communities. So in order to research the new economic models, Mark looked into ancient models. This is the second book, ancient models about how we talk about economy. So for example, the Greeks, they talk about the semantics of the word economy. As you can see, oikos means house. So how are we able really to sustain our household? This is the economy. And another word from Greek, ecology. So how much do we know about our oikos, which is our earth, our environment, and how do we take care of it together? And then we have also some Latin concepts coming from Latin. For example, value means valorum. So what brings values in what we do and who we are? This is very important questions to do and stop really going very fast as we do in our lives and think about what brings us that value in our lives to create wealth that is really, in the old English language, a condition of the well-being. How can we bring more well-being in our lives? And competition, again, another word of Latin that really means, we think of it as a bit of a negative word, but competition means striving together to achieve a common goal. It's somehow like a collaboration, and not really in that negative way as we kind of seem to see it of competitors. So Mark will give us later more of a definition of what happiness is. So here you can see a little bit about what Mark likes to do, also to create more knowledge and wisdom in his life, and also, of course, to relax. And you can see these beautiful pictures of Canada, where he actually spends a lot of time, because he's from Canada, Edmonton, and he loves going to the mountains. And you can see these beautiful places where he can find oneness and where he can find peace and wisdom. And here's also some pictures from his past, where he has gone through big journeys to connect to himself, to find out, to seek who he is as a human being, which is very important to do for each one of us. So he has gone through very, very remote places, and places where he felt very connected from his heart and from his spiritual seeking. So going now more to what's happening now in his life, Mark loves traveling around the world, is very busy creating different projects and reports about well-being. For example, he was doing recently a well-being report for the Republic of Northern Ireland. And so he travels a lot. Now, of course, with COVID, maybe not so much, but hopefully soon. And here in the bottom left, you can see him with the same jacket he's wearing now. And that was actually when he went to Tahiti, where he had to speak to a group of youth to inspire them to build a civilization of love. And you can see at the top right, middle half, where he's actually spending a lot of time supporting the Canadian First Nations, where he's actively working with native tribes to support them to create that civilization that we actually had in the past, but we seem to have forgotten. So Mark is going to speak a little bit about that. So I'm just going to stop sharing for now, and we're just going to speak with Mark. Okay, Mark. So how was that?
That was beautiful, Esther. Thank you. Thank you for combing my Facebook site for photos. Actually, I rarely post anything on Facebook, but I know I've sent you a lot of photos. So thank you, everyone, for having me. I'm Mark Anielski. I live in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And as Esther said, my journey is, as everyone's journey is, what I would say is a journey back to who we are, which is love. Love is who we are. I could stop talking right now and just say, let's just get on with it. And, but no, I had to take 3 degrees. First, my degree in economics, and an article with Coopers and Lybrand. So I was in the audit community. And then I became a professional forester, senior forest economist here in Alberta for the province of Alberta. Went on to the finance ministry. And 20 years ago, I decided to go strike out on my own in the consulting world. I used to teach corporate ethics, corporate social responsibility at the School of Business here. So that's all my, practical work life and degrees, so 3 degrees. But as I inquired as a macroeconomist, because I also have an expertise in things like GDP accounting or total wealth accounts of nations, and had the honor of being senior advisor to China between 2003 and 2006 on the national economic strategy that Deng Xiaoping brought in called Xiaokang. And Xiaokang is a Confucian word which means moderately well-off Chinese or well-being. And I realized that the West had no idea what this ancient civilization was actually doing. And in their wisdom, they were perhaps leading the West, which had become addicted to a growth-based debt-entrapped economy, was going to ultimately win this long race of civilization. So I've had the pleasure and blessing of working with First Peoples, and that's who I'm working with now. And I'm going to go back to the chiefs here, because I'm counsel to all the chiefs here in Alberta. And the First Peoples consider themselves as covenant people. They express very clearly that they are the first peoples of Turtle Island, and that they exist because the Creator God allows them to exist in harmony with the plants and animals. And so what happened was the brutal subjugation through the papal bull called Terra Nullius, when the Pope wrote a papal bull saying, go and conquer Turtle Island, because North America looks like a turtle. Terra Nullius meaning there's nobody there, it's empty. which was a lie. There were millions of Amerinds, millions of indigenous people here. And within 20 years, from 1600, and before that, the Spanish, there were maybe 15% of the population living after smallpox. So, it's a good context for the coronavirus, the crown virus. Anyways, I will not comment on the coronavirus. I'm a strategist, and I believe that we're either at a most important inflection point of a 26,000 year rotation that probably saw the destruction of great civilizations like Lemuria and Atlantis maybe 13,000 years ago. What are we to learn of today? Are we going to pursue an ancient understanding of our human nature, which is that we are created in the image of God, which is love? Or are we going to continue to be addicted to technology, to AI, to a kind of a slave system, which has been the dominant system for hundreds of years and partly exercised through the Corporation of London, through the banking protocols, I get that the Magna Carta gave birth to. So you saw my picture in front of the House of Lords. I was 2014 when I was invited to the House of Lords to meet the Queen's banker's wife. Her name is Lady Penny Money Coots. I couldn't believe it. You can't make that stuff up. That's like James Bond. So I realized having studied very carefully the art of war and studied Taoism and all these kind of modalities, and also my own experience as and here I'll use the word practical mystic. So I'm raised Catholic. And so I've studied in my 20s. I was very immersed in study of contemplative prayer. And that photo you saw was in 1992 when I was 32. I thought I had a good job, but there was a burning in my soul that there was something more that I was supposed to pay attention to. Now, in the faith tradition, it's called vocation, your voice, that inner voice, your calling. I thought, you know what, I'm going to take 3 months off and I'm going to journey. First, I flew to Stockholm. I gave a keynote address there. And I went to my father's homeland, Germany, and my grandfather's homeland, Austria. I camped under the walls of Assisi, went to Rome, sailed down the Nile River in Egypt, and then arrived in Jerusalem and stayed in the old city for 2 weeks. That experience changed my life because I realized every night going to the Holy Sepulchre that God had something more in mind than going into the priesthood. And I already saw that the corruption of the Catholic Church, partly for many reasons, but basically failing to fulfill the gospel of love. It's pretty simple, but so addicted we become to power and the love of money that even the church itself, which is supposed to uphold the teachings of love, loses its way and becomes corrupted. And in those evenings when I sat at Ecce Homo and would play the pipe organ for the nuns, and my room looked over the Dome of the Rock, Mount Moriah, Temple Mount, I got that calling saying, oh, crucified me. Oh, the money changers crucified you. So I want you to return to the Temple of Economics and restore what has been corrupted. Try to build a civilization of love. That's a big commission. Pope John Paul spoke about civilization of love, but nobody's actually articulated what it looks like. What does the operating system look like on a practical basis? Because it surely doesn't look like the debt system we have today, which is out of control. And the COVID crisis has just exploded the debt. And there's no end to this debt bubble except war, and which we already see everybody wants another third world war, don't they? Whether it's in Ukraine or wherever it is. Mm-hmm. And as a practical mystic, I say, no, there is no reason for war. And that's the most powerful word we have in our language, which is no. And that the word love and combined with the word power, as Dominique has reminded me, power in my interpretation is to be able, from the French, or Dominique, you'd say, to see with new eyes, the capacity for love, the ability of love to nullify all of the nonsense that's going on in the world. Not because I'm special, because we're all created in the same image. Yeah, we can build a new operating systems and hope that this bad dream will just end. But maybe that's a bit of wishful thinking. People say, oh, you're so naive. I live in this kind of love bubble. And yes, I do. And maybe, as Anatoly says, I'm an ancient tree spirit, or I'm indigenous elders say I'm the phoenix or the eagle. I don't care what I am. I am here for a short time in this body, an incarnate spirit, maybe as a messenger, maybe as an oracle, whatever. I don't care about the language. But let us commit together to this journey towards love.
So you were just talking, Mark, about many things, and I wanted to ask you about, of course, you have already spoken about what is well-being, but as you were just talking about, being a mystic or practical mystic? What is it for you to be a practical mystic, and how can that help you and help others maybe to reach more our goals or aspirations, purpose in life with what we're doing, whatever it is?
Well, first of all, I apologize because even saying that I'm a practical mystic, it's like saying I'm a visionary is arrogant and presumptuous. To me, the term, and I've read the stories of most of the mystics, and I love the female mystics. I love Thérèse of Lisieux, a great French mystic who herself said, my vocation is simple, it's just love. And yet you have these other great minds like Thomas Aquinas, who at the end of his life said, everything I've written is but straw. So the greatest author of theology comes to that place at the end of his life and goes silent. So what is mysticism? To me, it's a relationship with the creator, with God, with divinity, which of course is a relationship with ourselves, because if we're created in the image of love, then love is who we are, which is what I said to the Tahitian president, the French Polynesian president. I said, and then I was called the most dangerous man in the South Pacific because I simply stated that love is your brand. Thomas Cook, who came there, sailed or watched the transit of Venus across the sun 268 years ago, said, I came here to observe I came to the island of love. And in Tahitian Polynesian language, aloha, aroha means I love you. That's what it means. So mystic, we're all mystics. If we're in tune with the voice, the sense of our calling, that inner drive to flourish, to love, is really what practical mysticism. And all the mystics are pursuing. I don't care if you're a Buddhist or Taoist mystic or Zen master. We're all dancing around the same word or concept called love.
So we all do have the chances and the potentiality to be that close to consciousness. But of course, maybe not everybody is there. So that is, yes, we can all be mystics, but are we really that? If we are really all the time on the go and not connected and chasing something. That's why it's interesting to talk really about how you as an economist see also that greater connection to everything, and that really looking into all cultures, all civilizations that existed in our planet, and thinking how did they actually function and think. Of course, it's very difficult for us to prove that, but there are ruins, there are archaeology sites there that prove that we haven't been the only ones.
I'm working with those people right now. Again, just like the Tahitians, when I said love to the chiefs, they said, tell us more about love, because they say love is one of our 7 sacred teachings. It's our core law. So is courage and humility. I said, where are those core laws in Russia or the United States? Are we all under a spell, or are we all asleep because we've forgotten the laws that are so ancient and so common sense? Or do we get distracted? Does our consciousness get buffeted by emotions, news that is distracting us from achieving those higher levels of consciousness that David Hawkins talked about? That if consciousness is a logarithmic function, then of course it's difficult to achieve enlightenment and full alignment with divinity. Because once you do, you're out. You may as well just be in this taiga, or in Nunavut, talking to the birds. But here we are in this messiness, and we're in a deep, dark cycle of fear, which is, I think, co-created by those who want lower consciousness. If you want to try to stay in a consciousness of love, whether you're an individual or a business, it's very hard, because the world says, we don't have time for that soft stuff.
And so people think that love is actually about romantic stuff, but maybe they don't really understand what love means and what is the frequency of it, what it actually, how can change your life, and how can it actually create so much abundance and so many things happening. So what is love for you, really? Because for everybody, love is very different. It's like very abstract concept. And also another question is, how can an economist bring that concept of love forward for people that really understand it, and we can build it forward to create abundance in the economy?
Yeah, great question. So let's go back to the Greek roots, the word happiness. It's broken into 2 aspects, oi, eu, daimonia. Now, some people say daimonia is like your demon, like the golden compass or something. No, it's oi, meaning well-being of your spirit. Now, all the philosophers, many that I've read, to completely seem to ignore what Aristotle actually defined happiness to be. It's the pursuit of happiness as of course, a natural common yearning of all of us to have a peace of our soul, peace in our soul, harmony, well-being. The word wealth, the conditions of well-being, it blew my mind when I read that they came from the Old English. And Adam Smith and all of those words and pages, Wealth of Nations, never defines the word wealth as the conditions of well-being from the 13th century English. And I joke and said that's because he was Scottish. He couldn't admit that the English had it right. So my point is, as an economist, I had to go back to the roots and the original intent of the words, which, when you discover the original wisdom and spirit of the words, that's why the spoken word is so important. So when we say economy, we mean well-being of the household or stewardship of the household. When I say wealth of nations, I mean the real well-being of the nations. I mean measuring the well-being of the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual well-being of nations in terms of the medicine wheel, not Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which he came to Alberta. He sat with the Blackfoot in the 1920s. They taught him about the sacred hoop, the medicine wheel. And he turned it into a pyramid, saying self-actualization is the top of the apex of the pyramid. Like, it's a colonizer, it's a dominator point worldview. But when you look at life through a circle, everything constantly trying to move in homeostatic harmony, like in a forest ecosystem. So from a practical perspective, how do you design economies that mimic nature, that mimic the dynamics of a forest? Not the cancer cell model, which is our economy now, addicted to growth, where greed is insatiable, that more wealth doesn't buy happiness. We know that. And a few sociopaths, maybe psychopaths, run the planet. And we sit around going, why don't we just pray against them? Why don't we just nullify those psychopaths? Or maybe we just hug them. Maybe they just need a good hug, but maybe they're narcissists, as Anatoly knows. How do you deal with a narcissist? I don't know. I don't have any solutions, but how many are there? 100, 13, 500? Who are we working for?
You said also that we are also actually co-creating this together. So maybe they are there, but they are also a result of our, acceptance of them managing us. We are following what they want us to do. And so this is really what we are really working together. We are giving them our energy, our support. And so, of course, they are there. They are also the result of our work. So
they are there. And I love them too, because I've sent my stuff I gave my proposal to George Soros in 2011 at Davos. And he cynically, I knew what he would say. He'd say, I don't think the world's yet ready for holistic wealth. And Kaukoch Weser from the Deutsche Bank chairman said, I'm interested enough, Mark, in your idea to take it to the next to be a Sherpa, he said, to the next G20. That was 2011. He said that. Now, George Soros, I didn't expect anything less from the financial alchemist that he is. But what central bankers, you ask this question, does the central bank of any nation use well-being accounts to guide monetary policy? The creation of liquidity and currency, all water metaphors? No. More debt is it's the game. It's the game they've played for hundreds of years. And we have some nations, and I do give credit to China and Russia, to say, we don't want to play the game that London has dominated for, the Corporation of London has dominated for hundreds of years. We're done with this silly game. But how do you reset the global matrix without a complete implosion of the whole system? Or the Sumerians, who had ancient laws called a clean slate, which the Jews adopted, called Jubilee, would forgive the debts every 7 years of the people and redistribute the wealth and the land to the original tribes every 49 years. And guess what? We're in 5782 Jubilee. We're in Jubilee year of the Jewish calendar right now, and nobody's talking about Jubilee during the world's biggest supposed pandemic since the Black Plague. And the Black Plague was much worse.
Yeah, indeed.
So we're dealing with.
They seem to be always there, the plagues in our civilization.
So, and I think I think the term practical mystic means like, okay, in the art of war, know your enemy. Design a system, as Buckminster Fuller said, is more compelling than your enemy. Well, who's the enemy of love? Well, we are. You could say Mr. Gates is, or Mr. Fauci is. I don't care. I'm not going to judge them, but you'll know them by their fruits, won't you? As Jesus said, you'll know them by the fruits. Where are the fruits? Where are the fruits of well-being coming from the system? Or are we sleepwalking, acquiescing into a system that we don't want to be part of? It's not joyful. It's not flourishing. It doesn't mimic nature or complex aspen forest. These are the things I try to work on. And again, people say, well, that's, you're dreaming in color. So yeah, I like dreaming in color.
I think we have Natalie who wants to say something. Natalie.
Oh, it's just I have a question for you, Mark. I mean, because you have so colorfully covered like every aspect, going so smoothly through history and stuff. Look, we are all obsessed with technology, right? With people now like buying gadgets and changing their phones. And is there actually a place? We're talking about the civilization of love. Is there a place for technology to actually bridge that? Humanity with themselves. Is there any role?
No. The reason I say that is I joke because I was at St. George's Chapel at a special lecture on AI in the same chapel where Prince Philip, his funeral was held. With the sun setting, I'm listening to this really smart scholar. And I'm like, I know King Henry, he's just buried over there in the checkerboard pattern in the chapel. And I wonder what King Henry would say about AI. And I'm like, what a joke. Artificial. I said, what happened to original intelligence? I don't mind robots. I don't mind what Elon Musk, look what Elon Musk, you watch him on Joe Rogan, he's terrified. He goes, why is he terrified? Because he knows the genie's out of the bottle. We've created a monster and we can't put it back in, because once this machine learning starts to grow, it'll be like HAL, the computer in 2001 Space Odyssey. Kubrick was probably right. But what do we have the power to do? Pull the plug on HAL. So I'm not immune. I'm surrounded by computers and technology. They're tools. Why isn't it that we understand the inherent gifts that we have, the gift of the spirit, St. Paul talked about? We have gifts. I've been told I have the gift of healing. Shh, don't say that, because I'm an economist. I was never told that in church, but I had some other women who say, oh, you have the gift of healing. Why don't you put your hands on me and you can heal me? Like, okay, I'll just do that, right? It's just natural. Can I teach it to somebody else? No, I doubt it. So the question I have of technology, anyone who knows Marshall McLuhan was the great Canadian who said, the medium is the message. Ponder that, the medium. Ponder that right now where we're at. The medium is a message. In his fabulous book, unfortunately out of print, called The Medium and the Light, which is his own journey into his own mystical experience. So McLuhan actually converted to Catholicism. He did his PhD. He was cross-examining every aspect of Catholicism. And he said, if I find one error in the logic, I will tear up everything about Catholicism. He found not one incongruity, and he entered the church on his knees, he said. And at the end of this book, he says something absolutely prophetic. 1974, he writes, make no mistake, last sentence of his book, Lucifer is the great electrical engineer. So as Esther knows, I'm a chess player. I know there are other entities, there are fallen angels, there are demonic aspects that feed off emotion. We're in a war for souls, and we need to be very careful and not afraid, just aware that there are entities and enemies of love that exist. And so we have to be very strategic in terms of how we walk in this world and not get caught in emotions, which is the hallmark of entanglement.
And so definitely everything is, as for us conscious people, we believe that everything is connected with energy. So energy is not just positive or high vibrational, there is also low vibrational energy, as we know. So of course there can be creations of energy that are not high up, and they're actually active in our, we cannot see them, but they're there. Dominique has got a question. Dominique.
Yes, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Esther. It's lovely, Mark, to have you with us today. So we're very blessed, and I'm very grateful for that. One thing I would like to say is that, that will lead to a question. I think we got two major challenges. Funny enough, I think I don't think that the technology challenge is a big one. So I don't see it as a primary challenge. I see it more as a secondary challenge. The primary challenge are actually divided in two, and I think one is love, definitely. And I think what is really dramatic is education. When you see what we're doing with education, children, when they're born, they have a natural loving drive in them. And through our education, we take that away from them. And I think this is the first strategy. So one of the two questions would be, okay, is a way to creating a civilization of love means a total revolution in terms of how we educate children. And to me, this is a very important point. The second point is since the 1960s, we've seen a decline in intelligence. It's been actually reported by many different universities throughout the world. We know the reasons. Some are technological, the rising of television, mobile phones, computers, and so on and so on. But also some are more insidious. They are actually related to our environment. Chemicals used in food, chemicals used in everything we actually live in, carpet, tables, you name it, it's there. So to me, those are the two, education and this poisoning, not just psychologically speaking, but also physically speaking, of humankind. Those are the two main challenges we have. So, Mark, how do you see this? How do you see us moving out of that? How do we see us creating a better education for our children? Because when we speak to these top guns, we got to remind them that it's not creating new laws. And we can see it, for example, with the environmental challenges. COP27 was a complete failure. It's not about trying to be clever. It's about bringing intelligence back into our life. It's about changing the education. And this is what we have a duty to take back our authority and demand it, force it upon these people who are currently controlling the world. But what are your views on this? What do you think the path to achieve this in your mind is going to be?
Thanks, Dominic. Great question. Here's a skill testing question. What does the word education mean in Latin?
Educare.
Educare, which means to draw forth what's already within you. What is our education system doing? Inserting knowledge, not wisdoms, not Sophia. As T.S. Eliot said, where is the knowledge we've lost in information? Where's the wisdom we've lost in knowledge? Why isn't intelligence measured how? If the indigenous children, when they were 13 or 14, and we all know this, before we were 8 or 9, we had a sense of who we were, and then we kind of lost it. Why? Because we put into education systems. And then when we were teenagers, just at the inflection point where you're supposed to get your spirit name, and you would go out and fast for 4 days on the mountaintop, and your aunties and uncles would be praying for your spirit name, for your true calling. What do? You put the teenager into the school system. You start examining them as if you have to perform to some standard. And you've completely derailed the person's understanding of why they're on the planet, what their gifts are, what their spiritual gifts are, what their mental gifts are, where they find joy in what they do, in play. Why don't we have more joy in our workplaces? Why isn't well-being part of the performance report of companies? Why don't we care to ask our employees how their week was? Did they have joyful weeks? The failure of us as the overseers of corporations, and here's where I stretch a bit, because if you look at the DNA of a corporate charter, the legal document which gave rise to the corporation, in the US Section 3 called best interest, and the lawyers are saying, don't put anything in there. Don't even put fiduciary responsibility. Don't put profit maximization even in there. And certainly don't put happiness in the corporate DNA document, lest you be held to account for the well-being damages that Monsanto or Bayer or whoever imposes on humanity. And then we do nothing to uphold their responsibility and the damages they've incurred. So it's a failure of systems not to uphold degradation of what I call the genuine wealth of societies, the destruction of ecosystems. So meanwhile, we're dumb. As Satish Kumar said, we're hiring half-wits out of economic school because they don't understand that ecology is part of it's like partner of economy. And so how are we going to get serious? So I've taken the lead to try to create new corporations where we write well-being into Section 3, the objective statements, the best interests of the corporation. And I challenge any judge in any court to say, oh, I'm going to take you to court for not fulfilling your expected impact on well-being and happiness. It's a simple thing. Why are we afraid to move? We have all these lovely aspirations, the UN SDGs. And, I would say, notice there's one of the 17 goals. Actually, there's one goal that's completely missing in the 17 SDGs. What do you think it is? Nobody touches the issue of money. And we're just, what? How could you not address the fundamental issue? The key driver of climate change, in my opinion, is the debt payments being made by every American, every person on the planet. 50% of our household spending right now is going to unaccounted hidden interest charges on the global amount of debt. And that interest payment is directly correlated to GDP. I know that as an economist. Nobody
And
does
to
anything
all
about it.
and to also all the SDGs as well. It's
Yeah.
connected to all of them.
So are we just like stupid? Or we have PhDs, we're more educated than ever before, with more people and more students with more debt. Oh my God, student debt. Are you kidding me? We should be paying students to get a master's degree. Instead, half the US students most of them are, $50,000, $60,000 in debt. And they don't even have a mortgage, which in French means a death pledge yet. It's like, I feel like I'm in my business class again. And I would just be like, come on, this is like Neo in the Matrix. This isn't a digital simulation room. This is real. What are you going to do? You're a crematist. Business students are crematists. What's a crematist? Aristotle said, crema, study of the science of money, crematistics versus oikosnomia. Where do you find crematistics talked about in business schools? Nowhere. Education? I don't think so. Go on the land, listen to the animals, be in harmony, as I've experienced myself in Nunavut, in the most remote part of Canada, where when you're on the land and there's no sound, there's no EMF, what do you hear? What do you experience in the remote taiga of Siberia? You hear your soul again, you hear heaven, right? You listen to the animals, and they'll teach you if you listen carefully. We're so tone deaf.
Too busy with social media and Netflix and all that.
Exactly. I love Netflix, but I'd rather be out in the land making bannock and drinking rat root tea, which, whatever.
Right. So
in fact, that's
David,
a challenge, I think. The big challenge is, do we return back to a very ancient sort of hunter-gatherer place? Or do we, I've read Rudolf Steiner, Cosmic Memory. So Steiner says something happened 13,000 years ago. There was probably this ancient, maybe female civilization called Lemuria, and there was Atlantis. My interpretation of that story is the Lemurians are still here. They're the child spirit indigenous people that were almost completely genocided by the colonial powers. And then there was Atlantis, the great, shining, probably super technology advanced civilization, mostly probably male dominated, which subjugated probably the Lemurians, and with their hubris blew themselves apart. And maybe that's why God brought the flood, because of our hubris. What do you, if you want to believe the flood story, or every nations have a flood story. But what's this next flood? God said, I'm not going to bring a flood this time. What's going to be, in my opinion, is it's going to be a percussion of love. It's going to be the fire of love, so that we, whether we'd like it or not, we have a choice to wake up and reclaim this planet, which is a beautiful mother, and she is crying out for justice. And the indigenous people I work with are crying for justice. They said they tried to kill us and they couldn't.
Who? The indigenous peoples tried to kill whom?
No, the monarchs. The
monarchs.
The empires of Europe tried to kill us, genocide us, put us in residential school, kill
which
the
is a lot of
Indian
people is
children.
like the First World War, isn't it, really, in the modern civilization. So David, would you like to unmute yourself, please?
Yes. Thank you very much, Esther. And thank you, Dominic, for putting this together and all the support behind it. The programming is just spectacular. And I really appreciate listening to you, Mark. And since you're a practical mystic, I'm going to ask you a question. Let's imagine that you're at the G20 and they bought into the idea that this is a journey towards love. What are maybe this is an unfair question, you could answer it any way you want to. I'll say, what are the three first things you tell them to do, or you would counsel them to do, or maybe that's limiting, however you want to answer that question. I think you get the gist of it.
Well, I've thought about, thanks, David. I've thought about that a lot. I still haven't received an invitation, though. I was at Westminster Abbey in September, and I was at Windsor Castle also in September, delivering a document to Her Majesty. And I've delivered my book to Pope Francis with a letter inviting him to do what? To restore the original words of the Lord's Prayer. Forgive us our debts, we forgive our debtors. First order business, clean slate, like the Sumerians did, like the Babylonians did, like the Jews, I think, tried to do. What would that do? Eliminate half the reason GDP has to grow, right? Reduce the carbon footprint, free millions of people from debt slavery immediately. Then I'm going to send out all my auditors. I'm going to do a comprehensive, I want every nation to do an inventory, because that's what accountants do when they audit. Physical inventory of the state of well-being of their nation. I want to rethink trade models. I want to think in terms of operating within comparative advantage of the landscape. That's what Adam Smith wrote about. Talk about comparative advantage, not competitive advantage. Comparative advantage is a natural asset-based comparative advantage. So if China produces better rice than America, why is America producing rice and shipping it across the ocean while China also ships rice to San Francisco? Doesn't make any sense. It's completely wasted, inefficient. So I would do a comprehensive full life cycle analysis of all of these systems. And I would encourage all the leaders to have their economists model nature in the monetary policies. I would make money a public utility, not concentrated in the hands of a few bankers who have a corporate charter to create money out of thin air, which is what they do. And again, not a way of putting anyone in jail, appealing to the possibilities, as Buckminster Fuller would say, is these things are not crazy ideas, what I'm talking about. I have the spreadsheet ready to go. I can look at China or Canada through what I've just told you and say, I know how many people are unhappy in this country, how many people are in opioid crises, how many people are contemplating suicide, how happy people are. That's what I care about. I care about how people are feeling, experiencing their life right now. And if there's deficits, I want to oxygenate and provide liquidity so that my brother and sister can have a better life and a true pursuit of true happiness. Even Thomas Jefferson, note the C word, the pursuit of happiness. But of course, he didn't define it as the well-being of the spirit, did he? And so Americans today, I assume, David, you're American, is, again, it's like, are we completely did we miss the boat of one of the most highest consciousness documents on the planet? The Constitution of the US calibrating at 700 on Hawkins scale. And Canadian, I have to go and say, reminder, did you read Jefferson's footnotes when he helped pen that thing? What was his vision? Get back to the agenda and go and sit with the Onondaga people. That photo that Esther showed me, that's the Onondaga people. That's the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy people that I was sitting with there, who said, we have never ceded our territory. In fact, Washington used to come here and make wampum belts with us, with Martha. Wampum, what's wampum? The two are wampum, the Queen Anne's Covenant Treaty. What are treaties? They're sui generis, or relationships between two nations of sovereign, who are covenant people of equal standing. We know the story. Ben Franklin learned the whole U.S. Constitution is based on the Iroquois Confederacy model, and they haven't left. They're just waiting for us to come and have tea from New York. So again, there's so much wisdom still there. There's a remnant there that we have responsibility to reimagine or go back to. We pick up, I guess, the wisdom of those threads. Or in Russia, we have the ancient Vedras people who've been there for 26,000 years. Nobody even knows about this story. Anatoly didn't even know about the story. What did the Vedras people have? Like the Celts, they had an ancient culture of love. They have spaces of love. They knew that each family could live on 1 hectare of land. There's enough land for 10 billion people on this planet, if it was equitably distributed. But we allow inequality to just grow and grow. And what do we expect? Of course, we'll have wars. And yet you go to the Vedras people and you say, well, how did you manage? How come you didn't have wars? What did you use for money? How did you practice love? Like, what was love for them? And so I'm excited. I think we have an amazing opportunity. We're not stuck. Yeah, we could just blow ourselves up and just go somewhere else, I suppose. But go to Mars, go on a one-way ticket to Mars with Elon. Like, Elon, I want to hug you. You don't want to go to Mars. It's not a nice place. I've been there mystically.
Must be very cold, and surely it was a beautiful place maybe before, but now I'd rather be on, well, maybe no, I don't really want to be on this planet right now either, but who knows? I mean, what happened to Mars? So
can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
One thing that keeps coming when I'm in nature is it's like all creation is holding its breath simply for humanity to say thank you. Ho'oponopono, right? The ancient, to be reconciled again, say, I love you, Earth. I want to reconnect because you're not happy with me. I have polluted you. I've destroyed you, I've ignored you, and you keep giving through abundance. The sun keeps giving through so much abundance. We don't even know what photosynthesis is. And we're so stubborn that we continue to behave like immature, entitled children. And it's time for some humility.
Indeed. Beautiful way of ending this. And there is so much, obviously, I'm sure everybody has seen that you have so much to give, so much to say, so much that you're doing, that I really hope, Mark, that you're here for the next 20, 30 years, because we really need people like you. So make sure to take care of yourself. And
I want to flatten Moscow, that's all.
Years. Sorry?
I want to flatten Moscow.
You want to flatten Moscow? Well, you can visit Anatoly. Anybody else? Any last words or anything before Mark goes?
I would just like to say the profoundest thank you. I honestly, I'm here in Costa Rica and I'm in nature, and I was called here. I booked a flight the day before the second lockdown because I just knew I had to leave. I had to be with nature. I had to be with my intuition. And if I was to be the change I wish to see in the world, I had to believe in myself. I have to go it alone. It's not easy, but I found more people resonating, like there's sacred, safe spaces are being generated out of the mother of necessity. And I'm just so deeply grateful for you speaking this truth, because the usury behavior, the sadness, the grief, everything, it's just not to be underestimated. And prevention is the cure. We don't have to go through any of this anymore. We can put an end to this now. Love is the currency. And I'm just, thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia, because it comes from your heart.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm deeply grateful.
Very nice. Wonderful place to be, Costa Rica. I'm sure you're going to expand there, have some friends there. So this is really nice to hear that, Cecilia. And anything you want to just say, you don't have to have a question. Just there's so much we can speak about. There's so many areas but we have to finish now because Mark is very busy today and he has to go
to my next platform. Yeah, my next computer. Well, thank you so much for having me. I just want to, my final request is that I always say joy trumps happiness, because Cecilia, you said it, you can feel sadness, but you can still feel joy and hope, and it's okay to feel sad because being human. So thank you so much,
today.
All of you.
Look forward to the next time, and if you just want to talk to us or write us or anything, just you know where to find us, consciousenterprises.net, and look forward to see you next time, and enjoy Costa Rica. I look forward to be there one day.